For today's video, I'm going to be talking about design language, what it is, and how it can benefit both artists and clothing brands and brands in general. How I really just think it impacts them, and just going to go over a ton of examples from both smaller and larger artists and brands. And so, yeah, without further ado, let me just get straight into it. Okay, cool. So the first artist I want to highlight is Offgod. Now, you may have seen him before. He does a ton of cool work. And so, when looking at design language, the way I really think about it is just those like one, two, three things that you might see recurring that really kind of define. Again, I'm not really mostly going to look at brands today, but also, of course, this applies to artists. And I think this is just a good example. I have a couple artists highlighted that also happen to have brands, so it kind of works cohesively in that way. But really, just those couple of things that you see reoccurring, or different types of, again, like form that you might see recurring, that really kind of make up a brand or artist, and not really focusing on like what makes like not focusing on things like their core products and their hero products, but really, again, just those types of things that you see reoccurring throughout all the design they do, not in one particular product. So with Offgod, I actually was in Hong Kong a couple of weeks ago, and happened to catch his most recent release, which was a collaboration with Adidas. I actually have this shoe right here with me. Very, very cool shoe. And so, again, have not worn it yet. But with something that, when looking at design language, I really want to think about those, again, those things that kind of define the brand or artist. So with Offgod, I think he does a really good job of using these types of skulls in a lot of his work. So what makes this really powerful as, again, an artist or a brand is that it allows it for when you create something new, and someone's seeing it for the first time, to have that immediate brand slash person, whatever, recognition and awareness of realizing, oh, that's an Offgod piece. Oh, that's a whatever piece. Oh, this brand definitely made that, right? That's something that they would make. I think that can be a very, very powerful tool for any type of creative, and especially in business as well. As, of course, I talk a lot about clothing brands and brands in general on this channel, which I'll further get into. But yeah, his use of these skulls plus these kind of like wonky like motifs, I can't really describe it. It's more of just a thing you see, allows for something like this project to be so successful. I even happened to stop in. This is a perfect example. I had no idea this was at this his little sculpture was at this mall, and I happened to actually stumble across, go to this mall and saw this sculpture. I had no idea that he actually did this. I went and asked him. I was like, "Hey, is this an Offgod piece?" Because I could just kind of tell again by the kind of features and the structure. And they're like, "Oh yeah, like yeah, that was definitely him. He did that." So yeah, literally just a perfect example of like what happens when you have a type of design language that allows you to make your work easily discernible. Again, for artists, I think this is probably more important, and not something as much I can relate to. I personally am not like a really crazy visual artist, or like, I don't like paint or draw or anything like that. I do most of my, at least, designing through Illustrator and Photoshop, for designing clothes. But these more kind of multidisciplinary artists that also happen to do clothes, these people, it's definitely a lot more important, especially someone like a Murakami. I'm sure you've seen this piece before, but he has his own type of art style, and so forth. So next one I want to look at is, again, Huni by Mona Thomas. Just want to bring her up again because, again, she kind of falls in that same category of like a multidisciplinary artist who happens to do clothing, but has a very like kind of distinct design language, often kind of shown through a variety of things, whether it be kind of these dots and these kind of like futuristic text. You can see something like, again, this type of hoodie, but then you go into like this t-shirt that kind of this similar kind of vibe. Everything, again, feels kind of futuristic, a little playful. Also like the colorways as well, a lot of use of like gray, green, and pink. And yeah, I think she's a really, really solid artist based out of Germany, I believe. Also does a lot of like kind of metal work, or just these types of like structures, if you will. And yeah, does a lot of cool jewelry and overall a lot of cool work. And I think that she has developed her own style to where it makes it easily discernible, right? And so one of the main things that got me thinking about this whole idea of design language is because for my own brand, Apologetic Letters, it's something I struggle with to really develop, I guess, me as a designer, my own type of design language, but also within the brand, developing those things that are kind of reoccurring, and again, will hopefully allow people at some point to see a new piece, a new clothing collection, or whatever, and immediately like kind of discern that as being something that I created. So I think that's just really a big, powerful piece of having strong design language. Combined with also if you have a certain design language and people become more familiar with it and they like it, right? The people that do like whatever it is that you do, if you have a strong design language, it's likely that whatever new stuff you're going to create, they are also going to like. Versus if you don't have as much of a strong design language, um, I really think it can become sometimes difficult to have that kind of recurring customer base, as someone who might like X product is really not going to like Y product because it's so different and there's not a lot of continuity and similarity. So moving on, outside of these couple artists I wanted to point out, we have Madhappy. Reason I bring them up is not really because they have like, I don't think they have really strong design language. They're based really heavy. They go hard on brand and marketing, or at least they did. I think they've kind of fallen off a little bit, even though they used to be one of my favorite brands. And their product I think is pretty good, but again, it's a little bit more expensive and kind of again rooted in simple products with minimal branding, and sometimes they do some cool graphic work, but more often than not, it's these simple pieces. But a good example of having some type of like recurring thing that becomes design language for them is this little embroidery that you see right along the hood. So this tiny little, again, like addition, modification, whatever you want to call it, to like this, staple blank hoodie, if you will, with just the simple embroidery, has become very big for them. As again, it's something that no one else has really done or kind of coined, if you will. And so anytime you see a new Madhappy hoodie or just a new hoodie with this type of, embroidery along that side of the hood, you immediately think Madhappy, or at least I do. And so I think it's just a really small discerning thing. It looks like they've actually implemented it into these crew necks as well. I did not know they did that. I don't like the way this looks on a crew neck. I think that looks kind of weird. But yeah, I really like it. It's a cool feature on the hoods of the hoodies, and yeah, just a really small thing that's now becoming a part of their design language, I think, and something they're clearly trying to expand into other things, and maybe they try it on sweatpants and other garments and whatnot. But allows again for that immediate recognition of something that they've created, and is also just again creating something too that they know if it works, it will continue to work, and people that liked it before are probably gonna like the new product with X feature, right? That's kind of the whole premise. So looking at it both from an artistic standpoint and also like the business side, and trying to really improve that customer lifetime value and having those recurring customers. Next up, I have Basket Case Gallery. No wonder. I always bring them up because they're a really solid brand for a lot of reasons, and I talk about a lot of different things, and they happen to meet a lot of those different things I talk about on this channel. But design language is definitely one of them. I definitely think they have a bit more of that slightly punk aesthetic, but also a little bit of like kind of looking into like some vintage and cultural pieces. But I know one thing they talk about is that they do not do any direct references besides like they do have a subcategory of like these bootlegs they do where it's like very direct, using like Pikachu on a T-shirt, things like that. But for like 98% of the product, it's completely like like original, like uninspired from like direct things. Um, and so yeah, you kind of have to like be familiar with the brand for a while to kind of like understand the aesthetic, because it's kind of hard to define their kind of design language. But some things that have made it a little bit easier to discern are certain motifs that they have regularly using. So I know if they have a pop up this weekend, which unfortunately I'm not in New York, will not be able to visit that. But they do often these screen print things of past logos they've done. So they use a ton of like again skulls here and there. They've used like this kind of clown graphic before. And so it's all in that like punk grunge, like slightly, I don't want to say sadistic, but it's got a little bit of that kind of vibe. Yeah, I was trying to find the Thumper logo. They've also used this ugly one again for a while, which is a rip of the Ford logo. If you've seen it before. Yeah, this graphic right here, they've made it into again just a really core part of their like what they use on a lot of their clothes. And I'm trying to discern like design language and like common motifs, right? Because every brand has a logo or logos or motifs that they're constantly using, which kind of does intersect with their design language. But overall, I think they definitely have one that's a bit harder to define what we're really looking at. But again, like it's kind of like when you see it, you instantly kind of recognize it, right? Like every time I see these types of graphics, I immediately think basket case, and I don't. I've seen some other brands try and like kind of replicate it, but my mind always goes to basket case, right? Because I think there's some other brands that are definitely kind of biting off of them, and so that's the power of having strong design language. Like if they only did like if they constantly like varied the types of products they're releasing, and then they have like one or two with this kind of aesthetic, it doesn't land as strong. But when their entire brand now becomes rooted in this type of design language. And if you were to put like a percentage on it, like 80 to 90% falls within this kind of like category, if you will. Yeah, it's very easily discernible, and when other people try to replicate it, it quickly becomes coming off as biting, and people will think back, oh, that looks like Basket Case, not X new brand, right? So yeah, I think they just have a really good like brand, and they do just a lot of things right. And design language they've definitely developed, and I think they do it well. And yeah, really solid brand. Next up, wanted to highlight Loewe because this is what it looks like. I think when you kind of like begin to implement a new part of your design language. So they're a designer that I think does a really good job of having like minimal branding. You've probably seen the logo before. I won't pull it up, but they do a lot of subtle things that they constantly like will incorporate as a new part of their kind of design again language. And one being they just did a new jacket, and then they actually did this into a collection, I believe, of this kind of I don't even know how you describe this. This little like twist into the back logo. But yeah, they're just making this new kind of like look, and turning it into a ton of different products. And it's likely we're going to see this type of style from them be done again and again in the future. Of course, this isn't something that's gonna be like maybe like a core immediately. Like you're gonna a year from now see this twist, and maybe not immediately think, oh, that's Loewe and whatnot. But I think this was just a good example of a brand that's tapping into innovation, which I always love to see something that's kind of new, or at least like not a massive trend or thing of that nature. And yeah, trying to develop something new that could be, again, potentially a core part of their new kind of design language, or adding essentially another tool in the toolbox. Another easy one, Stussy and their 8 ball. I think this is a good example. Again, maybe a little bit more, not as hard on like in the design language side. I'm trying to make this a bit easier to comprehend. This might fall more into like a recurring motif that they use, which I guess kind of falls within that. But yeah, this is the power of having something such as an 8 ball, which is not something that's created by Stussy. Obviously, it's part of Pool, and yeah, incorporating this common product common object that everyone's familiar with, and using it time and time again until it becomes synonymous with the brand. So I guess because of that, maybe this would be considered kind of their part of their design language. Like anyone else that puts an 8 ball anywhere on a hoodie or whatever, probably gonna get called out for and saying they're trying to bite Stussy, because that's just how it works. But yeah, that's the power of incorporating. And again, I think it's smart too that they incorporated something that everyone's at least familiar with, the concept of an 8 ball. I've probably seen it before, even if you don't play like pool or anything like that. And yeah, I think there's just a lot of smart things they've done with this. And of course, from the business side, they have printed money with this. Everyone wanted this for a while, especially these fleeces right here. These things went crazy viral. Yeah, props to them. Next up, back on maybe a bit more the artist side, but he also does some really cool clothes. And so, from the artist standpoint, I think Henry Johnson does some really cool airbrush, paintbrush work, whatever work like this, where it looks kind of realistic, kind of I don't even know how you describe this. Like it's clearly done by hand, but it has this kind of like almost nostalgic kind of like Microsoft Paint look. I don't really know how to describe it, but I really like this overall aesthetic, and again, has become like really big with this design language. But then again, if we look at something like his graphic tees, he's made very playful text and this kind of distortion of a lot of just graphics you might rip off of Google Images. So if I have a good example, like we have this one, where is the one I was looking at? Something like this is a very like screams his type of style to me in terms of like graphic tees. And so yeah, again, I think that becomes really important. The bigger and bigger you're trying to grow and trying to grow a core audience is having some type of aesthetic that you can kind of fall back on, and people are will like kind of know you for. Still, you can experiment and try and do all kinds of other things, and I think it's important for a brand or artist or both to be constantly experimenting, innovating, and trying new stuff. But I think having that foundation to work within, or build on top of, just becomes more and more important. Again, we kind of see that idea of like the artist combined with a brand, or a clothing brand, into like this type of hoodie. With he's normally doing that kind of airbrush or paintbrush aesthetic, like this on whatever kind of medium he traditionally does, and then turning that into like a hoodie and getting this mass produced. This is just really smart and well done by him. Yeah, that's all I got on that. Next up, NL25H. I think this is a good example of just having a really strong kind of, again, design language and yeah, kind of just running with it. If you look at the brand really quickly, almost like everything kind of falls within this kind of category of really unique patterns done on outerwear and some really interesting colorways that I think just work well. All of these colorways, I think, for the most part, are pretty like aesthetically pleasing, like easy to wear. Even something like this bright, not bright green, but kind of like a yellowish green that you might not see a ton of. Still looks pretty pleasing on the eyes. Goes well. This kind of maroon, and I think a lot of the patterns they do are very simple but executed well, such as this fleece right here. I know this one was really popular. And again, they still might try some things like this football jersey, which probably, I mean, again, I don't know, maybe doesn't do as well as the other stuff. So they're allowed, of course, to build on it and try some other things. But for the most part, again, if you look at this new collection, it all kind of like 90% falls within this kind of realm of those interesting patterns and cuts and unique colorways, but still kind of simple, even though they really aren't. And yeah, that's why you have a successful brand, because the people that like it, one thing, are probably going to like the next thing that comes out. And so, from a business perspective, they're able to just constantly, I'm sure, have a very strong core customer base, and allows them to, again, just kind of have that higher lifetime value of a customer. Next up, Bad Sun. Not really much to talk about here. Again, strong brand. One, I don't really want to critique them because they do so well, but I guess almost thing that I want to see them do more of is like innovate more from the past couple releases, because it seemed like for a while we were seeing like constantly new things, but now they've kind of fallen back into, they've really established a design language, and now are really kind of just like using it over and over again, which again, I'm not like knocking them at all, but we're constantly seeing new like concepts from, such as these overgrowth denim pants. We've seen this time and time again, and now we see kind of this very similar concept, maybe a little I don't want to say dumbed down, but again, a little simpler, just with the smocking all over and the similar cuts and panels and things of that nature. We have again this oxygen concept with all these circular panels, but now in like a hoodie form. So it seems like a lot of the products that do, they're kind of reworking them into like other types of mediums. Like now we have this oxygen again hoodie that seems like it's lined with this really kind of like thermal look, but then we have this one over here. It's more of like a Carhartt like heavy kind of jacket hoodie feel. Similarly with this, we have this kind of puffer jacket, which honestly looks super badass. I really like that a lot. But yeah, again, we've kind of seen similar concepts with this starfruit jacket. They're in this similar realm. But yeah, really powerful for them, because again, they've really established that kind of design language and kind of yeah, some common mediums and commonalities across their product. And yeah, they do very well. I've made videos about them before. I think I almost did an entire video on them before, so please check those out. And lastly, going to end it off with the brand Online Ceramics. I think this is really impressive, because here we have a brand that really has established a whole kind of aesthetic as like a graphic tee brand. I mean, they do stuff like hoodies, like hats and other things of that nature. But they really have, over the last, I don't know, like decade or like 7 8 years that they've been going at it, really developing this kind of core aesthetic that's a little bit hard to describe. They use a lot of, I guess, in their topics, they use a lot of spirituality and religion in it. They also, again, if you look at a lot of their like A24 like movie collabs, you'll kind of see a lot of this kind of front and back, very big graphic, very sometimes bold color, sometimes just black and white. Um, Kind of define aesthetic. Again, you kind of have to go through their page to kind of see it. But yeah, I think they've really done just such a good job of kind of creating this whole world that they live in, this kind of design language that allows them to become very discernible and easily recognizable. Again, I think this is really powerful, and why they have such a core customer base, because they have developed this kind of design language and aesthetic that people are constantly wanting to see more and more and more of, and then they just switch up the topics. They talk about new things through their clothes, have new references. Sometimes they'll do these more like direct kind of bootleg tees. And other times, yeah, they just do whatever they kind of want. I'm a big fan of it, like such as this. I can't think of the name of it. I can't think of the name of this evolution. Espion. There we go. Yeah, I own this tee. I like their aesthetic. Overall, they just do a lot of cool work. And again, just wanted to end off with a brand that I think does it really well. And yeah, it's just powerful that they once you're able to do this time and time again over a long period of time, they've established a brand where they can literally all they do is just design cool shit and then they just post it here on their IG, and yeah, a lot of their stuff sells very well. Again, the main reason I bring all this up is because my own brand, Apologetic Letters, I feel like I don't do a good job of really kind of defining my own design language and aesthetic. As you can see here, all of my products are pretty varied, which is obviously fun for me as a designer and brand owner because I pretty much allow myself to have the freedom to kind of design whatever I want. But at the same time, developing that core kind of customer base has been kind of difficult. The reoccurring customers isn't as high as I'd like it to be because people that like one thing really aren't buying the other thing because they're so different. So yeah, one thing that I've switched recently or kind of starting is this card holder series where I mean we've seen this before with like a small branding and all over logo print. But one small thing I've added now is this kind of quote to the back. It's kind of an inspirational thing that I've kind of done with the brand. And so I'm kind of developing that whole part of it with this kind of quote on the back. And I'm actually releasing a hoodie soon where one small feature is going to be having that kind of like inspirational quote. And I'm going to embroider it on the sleeve to again, develop that as part of the design language. But yeah, besides that, it's something that I struggle with, and so through like reviewing all of this, I wanted to also like help me and also like help you guys. So yeah, that's kind of what I had again for today, guys. If you were kind of early or like into your artistic or brand you're running or designing or whatever it is you're doing creatively, I just think it is very important to have some type of foundation, and if you're able to develop a design language and have these recurring themes or motifs, really help to kind of define you. I think it become very, very beneficial for you for both as like again creative and also on the business side of developing that core customer base, developing those people that like to see that kind of aesthetic again that everyone that I kind of showed you before has kind of developed in one way or another. And so yeah, that's kind of what I have again for today, guys. Sorry I've been lacking on the YouTube. I'm going to be trying to be putting out more, but really been focusing a lot on designing new stuff and my TikTok account as well and doing some other things. So, yeah, please leave a like, drop a comment, positive or negative. Don't care, just trying to improve these videos and subscribe if you have not already. And yeah, I will see you guys next time. Thanks.